Well, a lot has been going on, so we figured we would check in and update the WVU football coaching search. You know, that little piece of news that we've been covering at WV Sports Now. Cody Nesper, Mike Osti here. WV Sports Now is the place to find all of that coverage, and this is another edition of Mountaineer Report. You can find this show everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, etc., and also right here on YouTube, as you can hit that notification bell and get a notification whenever we pop one of these. We did one live not long ago, actually the night after the Neo Brown news hit, and that one went wild. So we figured we'd try this again. So either, especially if you're listening to this back archive, either this will include some chat and be another live edition of the show, not nearly as long as the last one, though, I promise that, or it'll just be Cody and I. This will be regular edition of Mountaineer Report. Either way, we're going to talk some Neil Brown. We're going to talk some Mountaineer football. We're going to talk the future of the program post Neil Brown and who's going to be the next head coach. So, Cody, we're a few days into this thing. It feels like we're a year into this thing with how much coverage has been on the site and how much has been going on. So, where are you, I guess, to start this off in terms of this update? You change your mind on any particular candidate? Do you have any different thoughts on what's gone on? Have you been surprised by any developments? Are you in any other position to where you were on Sunday, now that we are knee deep about a weekend, almost a weekend to this coaching search? We've heard from Ren by this point.
Yeah. I'm probably at the same spot. I think you made the comment after Ren that's like you can, like he kind of says all the same stuff that he said at the women's basketball surge and at the men's basketball
Some of the
surge.
comments were similar, yes.
Like that's kind of what I've been talking about all week with people. Like we know what Ren looks for.
Right.
He doesn't care about West Virginia ties. He's willing to turn over every rock and look under every log,
Yeah.
and that's basically what he said. Whatever day that was, all the weeks running together a little bit.
It really all does. I believe that was Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yes. So speaking to you now on a Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, gonna cast a wide net, and like you and I said, not gonna rush it. No real reason to rush it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. He had the John Wooden quote, which actually I do like.
Yeah.
That I'm not gonna rush, but I'm in a hurry, but I'm not gonna rush, or something like that. Yeah, I'm in a hurry, but I'm not gonna rush. Like that is Ren Baker in a coaching search to a T.
Yeah.
And he's not going to rush, and he doesn't really need to rush because he's one of only a few Power 4 jobs that are open. I have a story coming out soon on the site. You could absolutely argue West Virginia is the best of that bunch. And even if you don't think they are, they're very similar to North Carolina, UCF, and certainly ahead of Purdue right now. And there's a myriad of candidates that are very, very interested in this job. Some that are legit, some that are not, some that he's probably going to seriously consider, some that he's not. He did told us that he's casting that wide net and he's going to whittle it down to a smaller group probably by the end of this week. Maybe as we're speaking now, he has a smaller group. But I do think it's a pretty safe bet that anybody who thinks he's talking to one or two people and this is done, and once their game finishes, there will be an announcement like an hour later. That would be very uncharacteristic of Ren Baker.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it actually has. You talk about the strength of this job, the attractiveness of this job. I think since you and I talked Sunday night, it's gotten better because we were kind of talking about, is this the best job or is North Carolina? And the North Carolina news that came out today is pretty bad. It leaked this morning that they had a Zoom with Bill Belichick.
Right.
And everyone's kind of surprised. And then later in the day, I think Stephen Godfrey was the reporter. He said, like, basically that was a PR move just to kind of drum up interest. And, like, there's big NIL collective issues at UNC and all this stuff. So now, like, since that comes out, I think WVU is pretty firmly the best job right now. Like, UCF is up there.
You could argue UCF, and again, it doesn't give you the prestige of WVU.
Yeah.
But there's money there. I mean, they're down the road from Disney. It almost feels like they could do a lot more than they are. And if somebody wakes up and says winning here would be good for the group, then I think they could explode. But as I have in the piece, I'll give you a preview. I mean, the entire debate during their whole rise as a group of five was, yeah, the strength of schedule is weaker, but we'll win all these games. We're kicking everybody's butt. We got Disney backing us. We're legit as everybody else. And once we join the Big 12, we're going to prove it to you. Since they joined the Big 12, they've proven everything I argued in the past so far is true, and they are wrong. We'll see if that flips.
Yeah, it's like I said, like from when you and I talked Sunday to now, I think WVU is the best job that's open right now. I don't know,
Yeah.
what else is going to come open. Um, but in this initial part of the cycle, it is, I think, the best job. If stuff comes open before bowls or after
Yeah.
bowls, like Ren's, the search should probably be done by then. So, um, but it is, and then we've been getting all the we said they cast a wide net, and then we're getting names that nobody knows and nobody pulled up. The defensive assistant from Colorado, nobody would have had his name on a list. The assistant coach from Penn State, nobody would have thought of him.
Yeah, the other one, not go to Nikki, right? There's
So
multiple
yeah,
now.
right. So it
Yeah.
is. I think that's just evident, like Ren said, like it's a wide ass net.
Yeah, and part of this, and this is what I think people need to get, and you would think WVU fans have experienced so many coaching searches, they would be aware now, is there are a lot of names that are going to be reported. And as I said, there's going to be a lot of names that are out there that Ren's talking to, that people hear from, that can't get fully confirmed, so they're not even going to get reported. But that doesn't mean that Ren's not talking to them. And Ren's also a type of AD that even if he does feel in his heart of hearts, okay, if Rich Rod wants to come, I'll do the Rich Rod thing. Or maybe Ross Dillinger's wrong and he's going to do the Jimbo thing. That doesn't mean he's announcing tomorrow. That doesn't mean he's not going to interview 100 people. Like, he is doing his due diligence no matter what. And I also think that you're always going to hear people come out as either candidates or being interested in the job or maybe being interviewed for the job that, as you're saying, Cody, yeah, Colorado assistant, yeah, he's worked under Jim Harbaugh, Nick Saban, and now Deion Sanders. He's 37 years old. He's not somebody that you're immediately going to want to be the coach. And I get that. And that's why I didn't even want to freak anybody out. I put in the report, like, I don't think this guy's going to get it, but this is just the case. And it could very well be one of two things could be happening. Cody, it could very well be because part of why I threw that out there and maybe some others didn't get as much steam. I mean, he's on Saban's list, and that could easily be that Saban's trying to help out a kid. Saban could easily tell Ren, interview this guy, someone in media will write about it. He's a good kid. He's not ready yet. But if you interview him and someone covers it the next cycle or maybe 2-3 cycles from now, he'll already be in this circuit and then he'll have a better chance. That could easily be the case, that Saban could be trying to help out a guy who's not ready yet, but just by getting an interview, it does help things out and it gets your name out there, because I guarantee you that there were people who never heard of this man's name prior to the report.
Yeah.
So that could be helping him. The other end of it could be Ren Baker is a very modern thinking man, as we keep saying. There is a coach who's vying for a conference title that's younger than that guy. So Ren could be sitting there saying, this man's had tutelage that I don't think anybody in the country has had, even though you haven't heard of him. Maybe he is ready. Maybe he's going to wow me with this binder that Ren says, if you don't have the head coaching experience, you better come in with this thing. Maybe this kid came in with this thing and impressed Ren, and then that was able to be dropped to the media, and sources then came to me with it. Maybe he's already interviewed. I don't know exactly when that's going to occur, but Ren's going to talk to people even if he goes into the meeting saying, well, this kid's not going to get it, but I want to have this interview. Like, this is, you know what I mean, Cody? Like, this is the time for Ren to fully have some coaching search fun. This is his jam. He likes doing this thing. So, like, it doesn't mean everyone he talks to, he's slam dunk, they're, vying for the College Football Hall of Fame. He's casting that net, man. That goes all the way from a defensive assistant who's been under some legendary coaches to Jimbo or Rich Rod. Like, that's the net.
Yeah. And it is, Ren said something really interesting on Tuesday. He said at the beginning of every year, he makes a list of coaches
He
he
did
would
say that.
be
It's
interested in
smart.
hiring.
It's smart, honestly, when
Yeah.
you heard him say why. But
So
yeah,
I was thinking maybe he just uses this as an excuse to
could be.
interview someone like that, and if he's like a guy who he's probably not going to hire this cycle, but maybe he likes the interview and his name goes onto the list. And so if this
Yeah.
George Hilo is somebody else hires him as a DC, he gets a G5 head coach job, and look, in 5 years, Ren's doing another coaching search. He's like, oh, George Hilo's on my list, and he has the experience now.
Yeah.
Um, so it is, and it's one of those things. Like I think we're all kind of just dismissing this guy. You know,
Sure.
he knows what winning programs look like. you know, um, I don't know what his duties at Colorado are, but their defense is a whole lot better than it was last year.
Yeah, supposedly from I actually went back. So supposedly Bruce Feldman claims that George works directly under the defensive coordinator. He mostly works with linebackers, which is what he did under Jim Harbaugh, but he is basically viewed there as the young up and coming protege defensively.
Yeah, and then maybe it's also like
So that's the case. I don't
maybe it's also like this guy's not going to be West Virginia's head coach. Maybe West Virginia's the school that gives him a DC shot.
Maybe he's the DC. I
Right?
mean, the weird part about that is you would figure that whoever they hire would then make that decision. Not like it would be weird if Ren loves George Hilo so much, but is like, well, he's not ready to be a head coach. Rich Rod, we're hiring you. Can you really, throw a bone to George Hilo here and make him your DC because you're an old man and I know it's a nostalgia thing, but I'd rather he's like a new up and coming guy and I want to get him in. So can you throw him on the staff and it can't be a lower level role than he has now? So it got to be DC. I just that would be awkward, I would think. But yeah, like maybe that could. This is modern day football. This is modern day thinking. Ren literally told us this is basically pro sports. You got to be a capologist.
Yeah.
Like maybe George Hilo, and I don't know this. Maybe George Hilo is a wizard of analytics, because Ren did say you got to be a capologist, and I got to tell you.
Yeah.
Do you think Rich Rod's a capologist? That might be a check against him that George Hilo does have over him. I'm not saying that's enough to hire him over Rich Rod or Jimbo or whoever, and even Andy Kotonicki, who's never been a head coach, that was the initial news, and his name is still out there. And I'll even throw out there. I actually spent a lot of today trying to get a lot more info on Barry Odom, because I don't know if you've noticed this just around the pipeline. I feel like his name is kind of dying out.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's not getting it. I'm not saying he's a candidate, but I'm not hearing as much about him. And that is weird because he does feel like the group of 5 favorite. He was the first name out there in general, even though that report really wasn't legit, because obviously there's no job handed to Barry Odom when we're still in the middle of this coaching search.
Yeah.
But I'm not hearing, like, there's no source that's saying, like, it's going to be Barry Odom. There's no reason to do this. I'm hearing more about even Albin at Ohio.
Yeah. Yeah. Barry Odom, I haven't really heard him for the other jobs like Purdue or anything yet.
Yeah, right, right.
So I don't. John Summerall, his name has come up a ton today and yesterday. I think he's maybe the favorite for North Carolina. In the chat, Jamie Chadwell too. His name came up big early, but then I think I read he turned down a job or he got passed over for one of the jobs. But yeah, like those are kind of the obvious G5 names that we threw out on Sunday. And as the week has gone on, you either with Odom you haven't heard about him, or with Chadwell, like it was up and down. And then like I said, Summerall seems to be the hot name right now, but so he might be the first guy hired. Yeah, Monken from Army's another guy. Probably since Army's they get the Army Navy game and they gotta. So he's probably busy.
Yeah, I mean, Ren. It could be that any of these guys that we're not hearing. I mean, Kotonicki obviously came out that night, so this would be counter to what I'm saying. But Ren did say he was going to respect any of the guys that had games to play, obviously. So it's very likely, and that even includes Rich Rod. It's very likely that those interviews would happen later in the cycle, or maybe they already happened, but he's not wanting them fully reported because that would be disrespectful to his current team. Like, as you know, Ren is a guy that I do not think he wants to disrespect the current team these guys are on. So if those are the guys, it might be a later process, but it just is interesting how certain names you're not hearing as much about. And then other names, if we were doing this a year ago, Sean Clark was in a lot of rumors. And now there's reports that Neil Brown is going to be the App State coach as he'll continue to be a Mountaineer. And Sean's out of work. But does that even make sense? Like, first of all, perception-wise, you don't be flip-flopping coaches in that respect. Like, that'd just be odd.
Yeah.
And he also kind of had now a tenure that went in the negative direction. So you figure he's eliminated, but he fits the mold of everyone else we're talking about now. And would Ren be somebody that would just cross somebody off for the sole purpose of, I don't want to flip flop with Neil Brown? Like, is that a mature thing to cross him off? I don't know. Like, we're going to see. I do want to go some of this chat though, because we have a lot of chat action here. I'm going to give you an overlying question here, and I'm noticing this to be a theme of the chat, a theme of the world, a theme of the fan base, a theme of social media in particular. And that is just simply, before I fully get back to the Rich Rod discussion that we'll get to, do you think Ren is interested in making a splash? And then a separate part of that question, because I already really know the answer from being at the presser, do you think he needs to make a splash? Because if you listen to a lot of this chat, if you listen to a lot of what the fans are saying, and this does not even mean all of them want Rich Rod, because you're seeing people bring up other names here that would be quote unquote splashes. There are a lot of W fans saying you just cannot do the Neil Brown thing. You cannot do an up-and-comer again. If you do, we're not going to have the patience that Ren would want. We need a splash now because Indiana, Iowa State, these other programs that are lesser than us, they quickly turn it around. They're quickly in a national prominence. We should do the same off of everything Ren is saying if we're a top 30 program, and that's true, and we're getting full rev share, which would increase from 12 all the way to top 3 financially in the conference. If all of that's true, it got to be a splash. Do you agree? Do you think it has to be a splash? And do you think Ren cares about it being a splash?
Yeah. No, Ren, he doesn't.
He definitely does not.
We heard him say that. Like, maybe my favorite line from his presser was, he said, "I don't care about winning the press release. I don't care about winning the introductory press conference."
100% does not care.
Like, who's like Tim Albin from Ohio? Like, he's an older guy.
That's a sprinkle. That's not even a splash. That's nothing.
He's an older guy. Nobody knows him because it's a MAC guy. Yeah. If he got hired and he won 8 games his first year, hey, guess what? That's a splash. Everybody's excited.
Yeah, winning would be a splash, 100%.
So, and somebody just mentioned donors in the chat. It's kind of the same thing. Barry Odom, right? Like, people don't seem to be excited about Barry Odom. If he comes here and he wins 8 games right away, the donors would get on board. Like, that doesn't.
So I agree with what you're saying, but I do want to bring up what Sean just put there. Sean Murray, I do not think Ren cares, but his donors might care. This, and again, I don't want to fully make this about Rich Rod yet. We're going to definitely hit a whole segment on Rich Rod on this show, but that is the argument for Rich Rod and or Jimbo. That is the argument for a splash. And I agree that if they win 8-9 games, everyone's going to be happy instantly. Look at Mark Kellogg. He was kind of an unknown to Pat. I'm sure Pat McAfee did not know who Mark Kellogg was prior to that search. And then once he starts winning, he's talking women's basketball WVU on the Pat McAfee show, which he never would otherwise. Yeah. Once Darren DeVries starts winning, they're fine with Darren DeVries. I don't know if McAfee or Ken Kendrick knew that much about Darren DeVries at Drake prior to getting hired when you had John Beilein out there. It's a similar comparison. But there are people, and these are some people in the know that are saying that people like McAfee, people like Ken Kendrick, who's maybe even more important than McAfee. I do think he's more important than McAfee. People like other donors who are literally donating money, and if you're donating money, you're then going to be a voice that Ren will hear. He made that very clear. Even McAfee, because of all the free publicity they get media-wise, that if they would tell Ren, we need you to win the press conference or we're going to not donate as much. Do you think he would listen to that? Would that piss him off? He's not going to want to be adversarial with them. Yeah. But if the donation is different, depending on whether it's a splash or not, does that factor in before we even get to the opportunity for that guy to win? That is how it could influence this search right now, and why I think some are saying it got to be a splash, because if it's not a splash, the fan base, the Country Road Trust initiative, separate from even the big money guys with Ken Kendrick and McAfee, like the fans are needing to donate. They need to donate too. What if they don't because it's Tim Albin? Like, does that affect things?
So I don't, and I forget. I was trying to look real quick if I had the exact quote, but Ren did say something along the lines of when he said he needs to talk to McAfee and he needs to talk to donors like that. He also said like no matter what, you're not going to make everybody happy.
Never.
Right. So I think that is another thing of like, that's kind of like trying to make every big donor happy is another dead end. That's for every Ken Kendrick that wants Rich Rod back, there's X amount that don't, right? And it's for every, big donor that wants a big splash and a name they know, so it's all a balancing act of, like you don't go out and probably hire George Hilo, who nobody in the world knows.
Right. That would be bad. Yeah, you would not win the presser there, 100%.
But you can't just hire in like and I don't want to misquote Ren, so I'll say like I'll paraphrase. Like you can't make everybody happy no matter what you do. So like that's the I don't know, dog chasing its own tail. And no, the new coach was not selected over a month ago. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, you want to believe everything you see on social media, you can, but it's every year what you see on social media has been proven to be wrong. I mean, Aubrey Burke shouldn't even be on the team if you listened to social media a year ago. Yeah. So no, there's no way Ren Baker is handing someone a job in the middle of a season and not doing a coaching search. Yeah. Like this is his favorite activity. But regardless, there's definitely not a coach already selected from a month ago. Even if now that's the case with Ren, like maybe he has someone now, definitely wasn't a month ago for sure.
And then it is kind of weird. There hasn't been a lot of NFL guys being brought up. Like Arthur Smith got brought up from North Carolina right away, and he really
he did. Yeah, Steelers OC.
Denied that.
But someone today brought up to me John Gruden because he went on Barstool and said he wants to coach college. And obviously he has the Barstool deal now. Yeah. I mean, I don't see Ren doing that, but like that would be an off the board thing. He is still young enough. I don't think WVU and Ren would, but I could absolutely see a college program thinking, okay, John, if you're serious, like you, because that's a type of hire like Dion was, even though he did work his way up Jackson State and HBCU route, that could immediately boost you get on national TV and recruits come. Like those are the two things that would persuade somebody to say, okay, either you're only an NFL guy, you don't really fit here, but if you're going to get recruits and money, we'll consider you. That's the whole Belichick UNC thing before we later found out kind of was a smokescreen. Or maybe someone who has no experience or not enough experience, like an Anthony Beck, 2 years in spring football, not NFL, not major college, not even group of 5 college in which you're the guy doing it. Maybe Ren would consider someone like that if he thinks he's getting Rocco back, for example, and you get multiple years of that high-level QB. You also steal from another team. Clearly, if that happens, Iowa State's pretty much toast. Like maybe Ren is a little salivating over that opportunity, and maybe then who knows? I mean, again, I don't think that's a sexy hire either, but we've seen programs go off the board. For sure. I mean, when Dion was first dangling out there, everyone thought the Florida teams. Everyone thought UCF then. People obviously thought Florida State with that connection, him being a Florida State legend. Colorado eventually emerged, but Colorado was 1-11. They hadn't been on the national scene in decades, and then they kind of thought and did what I'm thinking now and was like, that's exposure we haven't had since the 90s. Let's do it.
Yeah. It is something to keep in mind is like, a college head coach job is a lot different than it used to be.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of NFL guys aren't getting brought up anymore because it's like, the NFL is not a bad job now,
It's less stress. College has more stress. Yeah.
Like, if you're Arthur Smith, why would you want to go be a head coach where you have to deal with NIL and collectives and you have to recruit 24/7, 365? Right, like, and a lot of college coaches talk about it. Like, it's a lot of stuff now. It's a lot different. That's part of the reason why Saban retired. And so that's like somebody brought up Cliff Kingsbury. It's like,
yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
he makes a lot of money. It's not as stressful as being a college head coach. It's not as much work outside of football. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of being a NFL coach is a lot of work.
You have to want to be a head coach versus not. Like
Yeah.
that has to be the thing, because we've seen the reverse where like a Chip Kelly was a head coach and decided, nah, I'd rather be a coordinator at a great program and do less of the stressful things. And we've seen other coaches fly to the NFL and be assistants who maybe were on a trajectory to be head coaches in college because they don't want to deal with things like that. We've seen Jay Wright. Ren talks about everything we're saying. Ren said this. He's like, Jay Wright,
Yeah.
like these guys he's talked to, he even said that he thinks Saban would still be coaching without these current rules because it was too stressful for him. So, yeah, it's a different world. This is a completely different animal than even when Neil Brown was hired. And obviously Ren didn't hire
Oh, yeah.
Brown. This is a
Yeah.
completely different world than even 6 years ago. It was a closer comparison to say, okay, this is what you did when you hired Rich Rod with that regime. This is what now you'll do when you're hiring Dana, for example, who was replacing Bill Stewart. That was a closer era of football. This is a different world. This is a different world. That almost seems like it was 80 years ago in terms of what you're doing now and what you're hiring.
It does. And Mike, I want to go back. You had a great point a little bit ago that I want to talk about, but I forgot.
You compliment me so much when we do these shows. I feel like the world is gonna start hating you, and you're gonna heel turn here by complimenting me since I'm so polarizing. But I appreciate it.
You brought up Mark Kellogg, and I think that's a great example to look at. Where if you remember that hiring search, everybody wanted Kim Caldwell or Mike Carey, right? Like it was kind of the same thing where it's like if it's not one of those two, it's a bust, and who cares? And but obviously to a lesser extent because it was women's basketball, but still, like people were fervent about Kim Caldwell, and it's like if they don't hire her, it's a huge mistake. You got to stay in state, blah 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 blah. And then you get Mark Kellogg, and they go on a great, they're awesome. They go on a great run in the tournament, get huge national exposure. And now, if Mark Kellogg left, everybody would be right. Everybody would be I don't know, not disastrous. Everybody would be upset, right? But like you said, nobody knew his name 2 years ago. Like nobody was pounding the table for him, and so that's like I keep trying to stress, and people keep getting mad at me, but it's like you think bigger than the names you already know. There are really really good stinking coaches in the country whose names you do not personally know, and that probably aren't even being talked about right now.
Right, like with George Hilo, though, if we're talking
Yes.
24 hours ago, yeah, I woke up and got some news. Like,
So that's why I
got
keep being
sourced.
like,
Yeah.
as long as a guy comes in and wins, that's a splash. That's what Mark Kellogg did, and now he's, everybody loves him, right? And women's basketball is as popular as it's been. I don't know, 10 years since.
And you know what the other end of that too is? He's winning and he's having historic success, so no one cares. But you know what everyone's not talking about as well? And Ren is probably happy no one's talking about this, because when I asked and we talked about Kim Stevens, his answer at that presser was, kind of to paraphrase again, that I don't care about ties and I don't think she's necessarily ready for a big job like this. She was not even yet at Marshall. Marshall then hired her. She had Marshall success, and then she got the biggest promotion you could have in women's college basketball. She got Tennessee. So, Cody, imagine if Mark Kellogg was not having this success and they see her go from Marshall to Tennessee in a couple years after Ren said she wasn't ready. The world and the fans would then tell Ren, you didn't think she was ready, but everybody else did, and now she's at Tennessee. That would look bad on Ren if he passed over her, and in a couple years she's at Tennessee, which is obviously a better program than where you are. But no one cares or talks about that at because Mark Kellogg is winning and having historic success and got in the tournament and almost gave Caitlin Clark a run for her money. And this year they're ranked and they feel like they're going to be in a better seed. And I think if they're not Sweet 16, this year is probably a disappointment. Like that's probably where the bar is now at minimum. That's where he's brought the program. They've only have one of those in their program history on the women's side. So, but that is an example, as you're saying, where Ren put the blinders on, did not listen to the fans, said, I hear you. I think he does hear the fans. He hears them, but he's not going to just do what they want, nor do what Ken Kendrick or McAfee wants. And he's going to really stick to his guns and say, if the guy wins, you'll all be happy. And I'm confident in my guy, Mark Kellogg, will win. And he was proven right. Same thing. I'm confident Darren DeVries will win, even though you wanted Dusty May, you wanted John Beilein back. etc.
Yeah.
I'm confident my guy's going to win. And once he starts winning, you'll get on board. I think Ren may sit there and say, I know everyone wants Rich Rod. I'm not stupid. I'm not blind or deaf. He's on social media still. I know you want Rich Rod. And even if Rich Rod gets hired by UCF, for example, okay, I hear you. But if it's Barry Odom, Tim Albin, if it's freaking George Hilo, like whoever, Andy Kotelnicki, for example, if it's any of those guys and they start 3-0, if they win at the end of that year, the fans will say, we did want the other guy, but maybe you were right, Ren. Like, we're winning. And I think Ren just needs to be confident the person will win. That's his number one. Can the person win?
Yeah, yeah, and that's like the point I keep trying to make. And that's like I said, my favorite line from Ren from the presser was like, "Don't have to win the press release, don't have to win the press conference. You just got to win on the field, right?" And I think that's a great mindset for an athletic director to have.
Yeah.
Of like we keep saying, Ren clearly cares about media. He clearly cares about PR, but he's not beholden to it, right? He's beholden to winning and making money.
Yeah, that's it. Like winning and making money. I don't think he's beholden to McAfee or Ken Kendrick or anyone else you want to mention either. He's beholden to winning and making money. Right.
So that's why everybody that says like, oh, X wants Rich Rod and Z says it has to be Jimbo and blah 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 blah. Like we have to, and that's I wrote the article Monday, I think. Like we have to understand how Ren has hired here in women and men's basketball, because those were the two biggest searches.
Yeah.
We have to understand how he conducted those and apply that to this football search. And these things that people say, like, they just don't mesh with what we've seen. And now that Ren's actually talked with what Ren said, and that's I keep getting frustrated. I don't know if you see.
Well, because I do think, I mean, anyone who listens to all of these shows or finds our cover in WV Sports Now or finds us on social media, honestly, and I know we have some people here who are continuous viewers. John, I appreciate it there. John Hellman, who says he's on the night shift and watches these, and we're going to do more lives if you like it. So I appreciate all of that. But I'm sure people that are avid, viewers, subscribers, or readers, they probably are saying, you guys are saying the same things as a broken record. I get it. I get it. It probably is a little bit of the same commentary, but part of it is because as much as Ren is a great politician, I don't think he's that hard to read, really.
Oh, yeah.
Like he's pretty easy to know his mentality and what he's going to do. I think he would be a great politician. I think he'd get some votes from both Democrats and Republicans alike, but I do not think he'd win in the World Series of Poker. Like, I think I'd be able to get Ren Baker's tells, certainly after covering him for a couple years. And it would be almost hard to imagine a scenario, Cody. Like if somebody would tell you, not even just names of candidates, but if somebody would go to you and say, is it more likely Ren sticks to his current mindset and does the same thing he's been doing with every search, including volleyball, with the exception of the Ascension plan with baseball that he admitted he had to be convinced of? Or is it more likely he goes off the board, Ren Baker style, does something he's never done at North Texas, West Virginia, or anywhere else, and clings on to a 60-plus guy that he has no relationship with that did have success in the past and likely will be more expensive than the other guys because he does care about money? And I'm not saying Rich Rod is not a candidate. I know for a fact he is one, and absolutely him and Ren are going to talk. But, and just to throw that name out there, but obviously it's more likely he would stick to his guns and do the same thing he's been doing, because the same thing he's been doing, he even said during the presser, he's getting feedback from donors and Gordon Gee, who, yes, is leaving, but still, that what you're doing is good. So why would he sit there and say, everyone likes what I've been doing, it's all worked out, everyone's stressed though, so let me go do something totally different that I've never done before and really risk my life on something I don't know? Like, that just seems hard to imagine he'll do.
Yeah, especially when, and I hate to compliment you again, but the point you made, Mark Kellogg has worked out so well.
Yeah.
Like, and DeVries, obviously a great start.
I mean, so, Kellogg, we got a full season at least to see.
Right.
Yeah, he's the one who's worked out.
If his process is working and has worked it like it has, he's not gonna change it. And that's that's the drum I keep beating, is like let's look at what Ren has done and how he's done it, and let's try and apply that, and let's not get that, because that's he's really like the guy that matters. And so let's try and understand him.
Yeah, Cody Nesper, Mike Osta here, Mountaineer Report. This is a live edition of the show. I wasn't sure how this was going to go. Thought maybe it was just the night of the Neil Brown news. But hey, we're getting action here, so why not? But nonetheless, click on the subscribe button wherever you're listening to this, notification bell if you're on YouTube. And we are talking WVU football, the coaching search, trying to get inside Ren Baker's mind and get the pulse of the current situation right now. And I do think I want to bring something up that continuously gets talked about here in the chat and continuously gets talked about on social media and even fans, in the world, because the world does not only live on social media and on chats of podcasts, by the way. I do get that, even though that's kind of where I am a lot, obviously, in this career, that it has to be a power four guy. Like, you got to have power four experience. This is even an argument in favor of Rich Rod. Like, he has the power four resume. You got to have some power four on the resume. Everyone else you're saying doesn't have the P4 resume. Only real guys that have the P4 resume that are Rich Rod and Jimbo. So, like, maybe Barry Odom a little bit, but it wasn't successful. But you gotta have the power four resume. We can't do the Neil Brown elevated group of five thing again. I'm here to tell you that just because Neil Brown was not successful, and that's a fact, the tenure was not successful, and he was a guy that you're elevating who was young as a group of five. It was a very Barry Odom-like scenario. Just because that didn't work doesn't mean that no one ever who's a group of five that is ready to go and is winning and maybe now would be willing to get hired in this coaching cycle and would be ready to go and would be viable now, that you should immediately dismiss because of the faults of Neil Brown. Like, how unfair is that career-wise to Odom or whoever, that because Neil Brown failed, he's just disqualified? They're not the same person. They're not the same coach. The situations won't be the same. This is now a different era than it was 6 years ago. And coaches that have had that experience have had a myriad level of success. I mean, when Rich Rod took over the job, he didn't have just this ripening resume of all this power of success at all these major programs. No, he came from time with Clemson and obviously Glenville State way back in the day. Like, he worked his way up and then earned the job. I mean, Bill Stewart's freaking promoted from the staff, obviously, and that, people can debate that all day, but Dana Holgerson was the hot coordinator. Dana Holgerson was the Annie Konicki of this cycle. That was him back then, and the program salivated over it, and he was actually being courted by Pitt and other schools. Like, he was the guy that everyone wanted. There's a whole, you could have a 30 for 30 off of just that, from what I've heard, if anyone really cared to make it. So it doesn't have to be. And DeVries right now, he's coming from mid-major and he's having success, and you're fine with him. The same people that are fine with DeVries now want to make sure the football program has a coach that basically has a Hall of Fame resume already. Like, that's just unfair. That's not reality. Ren is not going to think that way, that he never can hire a group of five guy. Like, he's never going to think that way. So you're just going to set yourself up for disappointment. And also, West Virginia is an historic program that I do believe can win and can be much better. But it's not Alabama, it's not Ohio State, it's not Oregon. You're not going to walk in the door and just poach the head coach of all these current, successful programs that are at greater heights than you. You're not going to poach James Franklin. That's not a realistic thing. So if that's the only way you want this to go, where you're either poaching a James Franklin like coach, not him exactly, or you're hiring Rich Rod, you're probably setting yourself up to be disappointed. I mean, that's just why you got to be open-minded to everything that's out there, and all these names are out there. Even if you immediately read something, you're like, George Hilo, I'm pissed, because that was the initial reaction. Think the thought process that we did. Like, yes, I'm not predicting he's going to get hired. That was in the report. But there's many reasons why a guy like that could be interested, could be considered, could be on Ren's list, could be on Nick Saban's list, could get an interview. And one of those guys, one of these years, may get hired. And you may sit there and say, what the hell? And then what the hell turns into a guy having a successful career. A lot of coaches having success today started out as somebody's George Hilo, who then eventually got hired and it was able to be successful. Like that, it just, to dismiss those guys immediately just because Neil Brown didn't have success when he was in his early 40s or late 30s at the time of getting hired. I mean, late 30s, because he's 44 now. That doesn't seem fair to them, and that's just Ren is not doing that. Like, that is not Ren Baker's mentality. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and let's talk. Just real quick, I want to talk about
Yeah.
Barry Odom because somebody in the chat said
Yeah, and there's not much conversation about him.
he
So
said
go ahead.
he's disqualified because he wasn't good at Missouri, and like I just want to put this thought into people's heads. Like Odom was very very young at Missouri. He was one of the youngest head coaches in then Power Five, and he didn't have a good tenure at Missouri. I think he went 25-25, which isn't good. But like think about it like this: you can't just throw a guy out. Like coaches improve just like players improve. And coaches change and develop and get better. And so to say for Odom or for anybody, any young coach or anybody with history that's up and down, to say like, oh, it can't be Barry Odom because he wasn't good at Missouri 5 years ago. Like these coaches change. Like Bill O'Brien is a head coach again. Lane Kiffin, I think, is the best current example of that. His career crashed and burned. Went to a G5, assistant in Alabama, and has Old Miss up and running again. So like I said, coaches just like players develop and get better, especially really, really young coaches who are 34, 35. They get better. And so like that's just, I want to put that thought in people's heads. Like, don't dismiss these people because, they weren't good at this place or this. They change all the time. College football has changed dramatically. I haven't heard Dan Mullen in any of the coaching searches other than just people bring up his name.
Yeah, I mean, I brought up his name. I put him on the initial list because it was a name that I had heard in rumors. I've heard his potential interest. This is more of hearing stuff about him, though, a year ago, I will say. Like, he was more talked about then. I have not heard as much about him being serious, or I just have not heard as much about him from sources in general. No, a lot of the conversation does go to Andy Konicki, does go to Rich Rod. I know Ross Dillinger put out there that Jimbo's no longer a candidate, but I still do hear things about him. So I'm not officially going to say he's not yet, although Ross certainly could be more tapped in than me. I definitely, hear things about a lot of these other names that we're mentioning that are just not sexy to people. I get that. And it's very possible that Ren Baker hires somebody that no one's reported. Although Ren did say in the presser, and this is part of him being a politician, because I think he tries to smooth and like be liked by us too, that a lot of the names you like, remember when he said like a lot of the names you guys throw out there, like you're right on the money, like, those are usually correct. It's like, thanks, Ren. Like it's almost like he's giving us like an endorsement, like in the middle of the presser. Like you guys are, that was always funny. Neil Brown did that a lot too. Like, I think your coverage is really fair, Mike. Like, good work. It's like, okay, Neil, like I appreciate the endorsement, but everyone listening doesn't like you. So like if you're the one endorsing me, I don't know, like if that's gonna go anywhere. I just like, maybe it'll be Baby Dog. Like who knows? Like maybe who Baby Dog sniffs will get this job. Again, Mountaineer reporter Cody Nesper, Mike Osti. You got to be at WV Sports now. You got to be at plenty of our colleague sites too. There's a lot going on. I'll admit that, but we have a lot going on to say the very, very least. Like 150 stories in 3 days. It's pretty wacky. This is even more than we put out there for the basketball search, and that was after drama. This is a football search. It's more complicated, etc. The Bill Belichick smokescreen existed, but can you think of a name that would be a totally off the wall name that could emerge that nobody would dream of? Could you try to get ahead of what Ren maybe is doing to throw us off here? Like, could you, because we already know about Anthony Beck, which maybe he thinks would be that. Obviously, Dion did have college experience, but he kind of was that for Colorado. Do you think he would, not even just to get the job, but do you think he would talk to Bill Belichick and then allow that report to leak because that would look cool for WVU after North Carolina did it? Or there's somebody like that could emerge? I mentioned John Gruden earlier. Like, is there any name you can think of that would come out there, whether it even be in a report or get hired, that you think would be wacky, but we're going to experience?
So I have two thoughts on that. My first one would have been Nick Saban if it didn't get shut down immediately.
That's been debunked pretty quickly. I think Miss Terry didn't want that to go out there long.
That would have been the name to leak if Ren wanted to leak anybody.
Yeah.
And my second thought is, I said this on Sunday night. I don't think West Virginia is desperate.
They
In
shouldn't
like
be. They should not be if they think that. I don't think they think they are, but they shouldn't be.
and like uh, North Carolina leaked that Belichick stuff because apparently they got a whole bunch of issues with their money and their NIL and they needed some juice. I don't think WV, like, as much as people want to doom and gloom and all
Yeah.
this stuff, WV is in a good spot. Ren just said they're going to get a whole bunch of this revenue sharing money. They have one of the best NIL collectives in the country.
You got to wonder why it's not better in North Carolina, though. Like, if WVU is getting full share, why would North Carolina not get a full share? And Country Road Trust is a great collective, but why are they so behind on the collective game? That's obviously a major program in both football and basketball as well. Like, that's weird. But
That's
yeah,
what- But so there's all these things that like nationally people like this is a good job. I said that on Sunday. This is a good job. I think it's the best job open right now. They're not desperate. They don't need to leak things like that. They don't need to you know
maybe they don't need to.
They don't need to lock in on like a Jimbo or a Rich Rod and say, well, we're never, we can't get anybody better than this, so we have to jump on them on day one. And it's like, nationally, I think that's kind of the thought. But then you get closer and closer into the state, and it's like nobody wants to believe that because the football program hasn't been great. Like people want to act like Neil Brown didn't win any games ever.
Well, yeah, and as I said, even on a show I appeared on today, and obviously it wasn't good enough by the standard of the program, and Ren talked about that we're looking, and this is what Ren's saying, so WVU is looking to get in that full share. He did say if we get in the full share, which we expect, and I also think, Cody, I think we know Ren well enough now. If that wasn't almost a lock, he's not saying it in a press conference.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Like if he believes they're getting this full share, he did say that we would move from 12th financially in the conference to top third, which would then meet where the fans' expectations have been. But to defend Neil Brown, which is what he wants to do because he likes Neil, but is true that in the last 6 years, the program's been number 12 or I guess number 10 when it was less than 16 teams or whatever that would correlate to. And the expectations were to still be in the top third, and that's hard to do. But he's expecting to be there moving forward. So again, I guess if you're Neil Brown to listen to that, you're probably looking at Robert Morris and being in the top third and thinking, man, like what the hell?
Yeah.
But so if all of that is true, and I do think there's something to be said again that he brought up about McAfee and about the national exposure and about national TV. And if you're a TV network, what team would you rather put on your station? UCF, Purdue, North Carolina, or West Virginia? There's more Mountaineer fans in football than any of those programs, win or lose. The crowd's likely going to have more people in it, win or lose, if you want to worry about your camera shot. McAfee's not going to talk about any of these other schools. He's only going to talk about one on his station that gets more ratings than any other. There's a lot of alums that are very prominent. Like, yeah, even if they don't get into this top third and they're bad financially, you could argue that it makes more sense in terms of getting that national TV exposure. So I think UCF's a great job. I think they're a sleeping giant. I think UNC should be a better job than it is, and Purdue is just a dumpster fire right now in the Big Ten. They're never really going to contend there. But I think West Virginia is certainly a good job that has a lot to sell. I don't think Ren thinks he's desperate. And everything, I don't want people to think also that anyone's naive. Everything is not hunky-dory. Everything's not hunky-dory. There is a financial problem there. The school finances are different than the athletic department, but the athletic department did go in the red many, many times. But a lot of the departments go in the red. Like 90% of most athletic departments in the country at major levels are in the red. So I don't think any of the problems people think are just, people act like the problems at WVU are unique to just WVU.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of, again, Pitt has very similar NIL and financial problems, and they are in a major top 25 city, whereas West Virginia is in a poor state. And their NIL and their finances are no better to the point they fired an AD in the midst of a year. They thought they were undefeated, and they're firing an AD. Like, so it's not unique to just WVU. Does that mean they're going to go ahead and win the Big 12? Does that mean that they're rolling in cash? Does that mean they can outbid teams? Does that mean the finances are straight? No. But it means you're just looking at comparing yourself to UCF, North Carolina, and Purdue. And in that comparison block is not that bad. And I think Ren can win a sales pitch if he's sitting there. Because I know for a fact Kotornick is a WVU candidate. I've heard from North Carolina people that he's a North Carolina candidate. I think if Ren wants Kotornicki, he can win a sales pitch and saying WVU is a better job than that one.
Yeah.
If that's what he's deciding between.
Yeah. I was going to say in the chat, Dave Wonstad is an awesome name to throw out. Good for you, Jay.
that might be something. Yeah, Dave Watts, that would be real interesting. That would be really, really interesting. Get him, maybe bring in Rich Rod, get him on the staff. Like that would even be something just in that regard here. I also do appreciate, I saw Sean Murray earlier said that he's missing Thursday Night Football for this, and that's Packers Lions, even though last I checked, the Lions had a comfortable lead there. But yeah, Tom Brady could be a wacky name to throw out there. He's an owner right now, part owner of the Raiders. I don't think he'd even be able to legally come in and coach a college football team while owning an NFL. That'd be really something. Maybe they're different leagues. But it's just there's, and maybe the reason why we're not hearing as many reports on Barry Odom, everyone throwing all this at the wall on their sites, but not much on Barry Odom since really day one. Does that necessarily mean he's not still a candidate? No, does not. I mean, maybe Ren. The guy, like Ren also said that if McAfee didn't start talking about their conversation, he wouldn't have put it out there. Like maybe Ren would prefer to work with the guy that no one's talking about.
Maybe Barry Odom's agent has the tightest lips.
Maybe.
Right? Like
maybe.
Everybody that we know, it's leaks, right? Because nothing's official.
Yeah.
So maybe names we haven't heard.
Oh, okay.
Their agents just don't talk.
Yeah, maybe
the people around them just don't talk. Oh, and somebody said earlier, like,
maybe
do the recruits that signed know something? No, you do not tell 17, 18-year-olds anything you don't want out there.
That would be wild.
If the recruits knew even if they just knew who the candidate pool was, it would have been out there.
Yeah, that would be wild. They would be out there. They're kids. They're immature. Even if you like telling them like don't say anything, they're gonna be like, oh, okay, let me text my friend. Like you should come here because Rich Rod's coming and you fit in the spread. Yeah. Like nah, like they don't.
Let me tell my girlfriend's dad.
Right? Yeah, like you don't want that. Right now, because I'll ask that actually though, because we both know. And I'm trying to figure this out, trying to talk to some of the kids. We got some answers from some of these kids, but it's really the same old quotes of like, I want to play, like, I love, West Virginia, the program, etc. Why do you think they were able to lock in most of their commits, flip some? Their recruiting class rankings nationally, 247 on 3 ESPN are better than Pitt's. Why do you think that is when they don't have a head coach? Because the reason why I'm asking, there are two reasons why a kid will go to a school even in this era. Two reasons. These are the two biggest reasons. Obviously, there are other ones. One, money. Two, the coach. The coach is not there. And if we agree the Ren didn't tip them off, maybe he said, trust me. Maybe he dropped some, seeds and said, trust me, I got a guy coming in that's going to fit your game plan. I'm sure he didn't tell him the name of that coach. Obviously, the assistants right now on this staff that are working the phones, you give them credit. They're the ones that locked them and made sure they're there. But it's pretty likely that whoever's the head coach is getting rid of all these assistants because they want to bring their guys in. Maybe you keep one or two, but not all of them. So how did they pull that off?
Yeah.
And what does that tell you? Does that tell you anything about anything? Like, does that give you confidence, or does that just maybe give you concern these kids are then going to leave again? And we're going to be doing this again in a couple months whenever they hire somebody and they were just hoodwinked right now?
Yeah, that tells me two things. One, Country Road Trust, like I said, one of the best NIL collectives in the country.
Yeah.
I don't think since this whole NIL stuff, I don't think we've ever heard anything bad with them. No scandal, no kid not getting paid, no promises not kept.
Yeah, because we hear that a lot these days, right? North Carolina is another. Yeah, there's a lot.
North Carolina, Florida, like you hear that a lot from all over the country. You've never heard it with Country Roads Trust.
Yeah, UNLV.
So
you heard it under Barry Odom, though, by the way.
So I think that's a big one. Of the people running that are doing a great job and have done a great job. Two, these assistant coaches, for whatever reason, Chad Scott, Blaine Stewart, Sean Brown, Jeff Coons.
Yeah.
They've recruited their butts off.
Yeah. You got to give them credit.
For kids, they are probably not going to be here, coach. Right? For a program that is probably going to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And I think that says a ton about them.
Not even just them, though. I think Taylor West and all of those people that work in the recruiting department. I mean, let's face it. she's beholden to the coach. Like they
Yes.
all could be, they're all likely gone. They're all likely gone. And they were firing off texts and on the phone to lock these kids up. Not even just the coaches, the whole support staff,
Yes.
the whole recruiting department. No matter who the head coach is, it could be George Hilo, it could be Rich Rod, it could be Jimbo, it does not matter. That guy could single-handedly hold their career in his hands at WVU and say, I just want my people. And everyone would understand, but yet and that guy could be coaching the players that the other people you're getting rid of are recruiting because they're not going to give a whole new group. Like they're going to get some of these kids. So a lot of credit has to go to them. And it's easy for Ren to say, like, you do right by W while you're an employee, I'll do right by you. But in the back of your mind, especially if you're shit on Brown, who is like the least likely to be back because his position was the worst this past year, you could still say, what does do right by me mean, Ren? You're gonna cut me $100,000? Like that doesn't feed my family for the next 10 years. I got to get another job, etc. And you're just not putting your earnest in. Or you could mail it in and be like, I'll send a text. That's what Ren, you told me to send a text. Here it is. Here's a text. But clearly to pull off what they pulled off, they were going above and beyond for probably not much gain. I mean, their financial contracts, they would get their buyouts or whatever anyway. It's not like Ren's going to go to court with them. So you got to give them credit for that. Yeah.
They circled the wagons, and it's not like they just hit up all the guys that were verbally committed and locked them all in.
No.
They flipped 2 guys on signing day without a head coach.
Imagine flipping a WVU. Like Mallory, like I joked with Steven, like we should have just pre-wrote that because I knew that anyone who's that level of a recruit that other major programs are going after, I figured they would flip out.
Yeah.
But to flip in under those circumstances, it's wild. Again, tip of the cap. Everyone's been saying it. I did a whole story on it because I just found so much. Like it's wild. Tip of the cap to them. They likely know that they're probably talking to other programs now because they know that they're not going to be around, but they still did that. And I mean, that right there should be a recommendation that there shouldn't be one of them that's not working somewhere because that's insane. Like, so so tip of the cap to all of them to do that. Let's see if there's anything else here in the chat. As we're doing a live chat edition here at Mountaineer Report again for everyone listening to the archive. This is not your traditional pod, but we got a non-traditional week here covering Mountaineer athletics and probably a non-traditional couple weeks. Do you think there's a new coach by the bowl game? Regardless, Chad Scott's going to be the interim coach of the bowl game. This staff will help him. It'll be part of still doing right by them. Ren even literally answered Herzl's question that the whole staff is going to be there the rest of the whole month. They're going into 2025 with them. And then the new year, obviously you have a new coach, you probably then part ways, but that means the bowl game is not changing even if you have a coach before that. But do you think that we watch that bowl game with knowing the next coach?
I think that would be a good like deadline to shoot for, not for Ren, for fans.
Okay.
Because it's because they're so early in the cycle, because there's no huge competition right now. Like they're not going to have to wait for dominoes to fall, right? Like I think WVU could be the first domino.
Okay.
I don't think this stretch. Like
if you think they're the best program, though, you could sit and wait if you're playing poker. You don't have to be the first domino if you think you're the best program.
Well, if you're the best job right now, go out and get who you want. Like as soon as you find your guy, just nab him.
That's true. Yeah.
And so, like, if this extends all the way to Christmas, I would be extremely surprised. Like if
I mean that's 10 days beyond the bowl game. The bowl game, what's at the 17th? And Ren did say like he wanted an early bowl game, which is why he didn't get a great matchup. They got a crap bowl game, but I think Ren probably was on the phone like, give me the worst bowl game imaginable. We want it over by the 20th. We want to play in the 41st bowl, but we don't give a damn about it. And then let's power through the next era. I imagine he didn't want to have a Duke's Mayo Bowl scenario where the whole fan base is going down there. You're December 27th. He didn't want that, I'm sure. So they got what they wanted, even though it's not intriguing. That's still, though, more. I mean, that's almost 2 weeks from now. That sounds like that is close, but like when you look at the calendar, like that is still another. We're on the 5th now. I mean, that's a while from now still.
Yeah, but that's just that's the kind of feeling I get. And the early bowl, it is, and Ren gave his explanation about the transfer portal, but it also feels like, hey, let's just get the bowl out of the way
That's what it feels
and
like. Yeah, I get
we'll
it.
have a clean slate, and whoever we bring in won't have to deal with anything.
Yeah, I think it 100% feels like let's just get out of the way. What Derek brought up is what I brought up on social earlier. The problem is everyone's so amped up about Rich or Jimbo that they're going to be disappointed when it's someone else. And I think that's a true thing. I think there are so many people that are now so much in the Jimbo and Ren boat or the Jimbo and Rich Rod boat, and they're putting pressure on Ren and thinking that's going to do it. And they're just, people think that Ren is going to get, that's the thing. People think that the fans, Ken Kendrick and Pat McAfee, are going to peer pressure Ren Baker into doing what they want. That is literally what the fans think. And I'm even going to use another word that's not as nice. I believe there are fans who believe that them as fans, Ken Kendrick and McAfee, who both obviously do want Rich Rod, are going to bully Ren Baker into doing something. And again, I love McAfee with the best of them, but he literally said the words, "I'm not trying to put pressure on Ren," and then spent 15 minutes talking about why it should be Rich Rod. If he's really not trying to mess with Ren, he wouldn't do that. I think that they are trying to bully Ren, but I don't think Ren's going to get bullied. I think Ken Kendrick, McAfee, and the fans are underestimating Ren. I do. And I think he's proven to do not underestimate him because he won't do what you want, but he will still be good with every other search.
Yeah.
So I just find it hard to believe that he's going to capitulate to what everyone wants in this search, which is the most important one. And I was on Alex Wiederspill's radio show. I was on his show, and he made the comment that Ren Baker is making a decision right now that will affect his career in life forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the weirdest part about that is there aren't many of us in the world that are going to ever make a decision that impactful about the career in life, especially not at that age. He's in his 40s. He's still a young man. It is so important that he's not going to be bullied. He's not going to be knee jerk when you know the magnitude of it. And he admitted this is more important than a basketball search. This is it for the program. Even if they get full rev share and all these other the basketball team, they get full rev share. Say DeVries in the Final Four and you got full rev share announcement and Kellogg's winning you a national title in women's basketball and the soccer's clicking and baseball's clicking and volleyball's clicking, but you swing and miss with this football coach, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And again, ask Pitt. They have a volleyball program that's likely going to win a national championship right now. And the facility they built for their Olympic sports eventually got their athletic director fired because one of those teams exceeded the value of what that was, and no donor gave a damn. The donors did not donate. They wanted a certain amount of money donated, and yes, they're going to fund it because, they just have to, but they wanted it ideally funded by donors. And donors said, great, we want them to win a national title in volleyball. We're giving you no money to do it. We're putting money into football to go 7-5.
Yep.
And that's just how it is. That's college sports. So you got to have football win, period.
And let's, maybe this can be the last thing we talk about, Mike. You brought up Taylor in the chat, which assistants get retained. That's kind of tricky because the assistants who are the best that people would want back are the ones that other people are going to want to hire too.
They're going to have better options, so probably, yeah.
Chad Scott's going to be a red hot name for assistants. What he did here with running backs, both developing guys and retaining guys.
Do you think as an OC, though, what does he do with quarterbacks? If I'm going to be a critic of him, he's a great guy. He is a running back guy, but I feel like he's a bit of oddly cast as an OC. When we ask him about quarterbacks, he pivots to talk about the running game again. It's like,
no, I think I think he's an OC if the head coach is a Neil guy who calls the own offense.
True. Okay.
If he was the running backs coach at Georgia next year, would anybody be surprised?
No. And would that be a better job than being an offensive coordinator at WVU? Probably, maybe, depending on the money. If you're him, you're not the head coach.
So, Chad Scott's going to be red hot. Blaine Stewart, with the way he's recruited in his 2 years as a college coach.
Yeah.
Jeff Koons, he's
I
going to be a
think
big name.
I think if Brown was retained, he would have considered making Jeff Koons the DC. Like, I think Jeff Koons is going to be a hot DC. He's now done it twice with Cincinnati, and now I think he's great in a presser. He really is comfortable doing it. And the one you didn't get to, I think Bilal Marshall is going to really be plucked by somebody.
Yes.
He's on that top 30, under 30 every year. The only reason he was off of this year, I believe he turned 30. Like, he is a hot commodity out there. He's really popular. He's a great recruiter. He's a former player. He's a great wide receivers coach. I could see him elevating, and someone even maybe in a group of 5 will give him an OC shot. Like, I think Bilal Marshall is going to be a hot coach too. 100%.
Same with Andrew Jackson. He's another guy.
I love him. He's a great dude.
He's been awesome here. I think he gets a shot. That like Vic Cabral, didn't really see him enough.
He's new, but he's a great guy. I've talked. I haven't. Yeah, I haven't seen him enough doing the job. Although I obviously am at practice, but it's harder to observe what he's exactly doing with the linebackers. But he's a really nice dude. I've talked to him a bunch. He comes. I mean, some of these guys are Neil disciples, so that's why the fans are turned off by them. But that's common. Like, the thing that I don't think people understand is you're turned off by the staff because they're Neil disciples, even though maybe there's other positive attributes that we're talking about, recruiting or whatever else. The new coach comes in, whether it be Barry Odom, Rich Rod, Jimbo, whoever, Andy Kotelnicki, then their staff's going to be Kotelnicki disciples or Odom disciples. And if they lose year one, you're going to hate their disciples. But guess who they're going to – if Barry Odom loses in year one and has to fire his defensive coordinator and his disciple, guess what he's going to do when he replaces that guy? Go back to his phone book and say, who else do I know, like, can bail me out of this? He's not going to do the thing that everyone wants. Like, I have no idea who the hell these people are. Let me just close my eyes and, like, somebody else, like, come aboard.
Yeah.
Like, everyone wants their guys that they know and they're comfortable with.
Yeah. And one other thing, like, it seems like Neil's going to get a head coach job. Right, like we've talked, maybe he'll be a coordinator. It seems like he's going to get a head coach.
Yeah,
job.
He's turning down jobs. He clearly has options.
If Neil gets the App State job, you think he's not going to call up his boys and bring them along?
Especially, he might be able. He might, obviously, there's less money there. It's a group of 5 level, but he could sell it to them.
I mean, you think Matt Moore isn't going to go to App State with Neil? You think You think Chad Scott wouldn't go to App State just to stay with Neil, even if he's going to be a really hot assistant? Like,
I could see AJ doing the same thing. They're comfortable. They know they have security, even though at least with this coach, they were able to ride it out with Neil for 6 years in some cases.
And like the thing, like Neil is loyal to a fault. Like, I think
you could argue that
loyalty, maybe with the defensive coaches.
100%. He vocally said he pounded the table to keep the entire defensive staff, and then he ended up getting here and he's firing Jordan Leslie. I wouldn't be shocked if Jordan Leslie's on that App State staff. He's going to save Jordan Leslie's life.
Would maybe shock me.
maybe because it's personal stuff going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
And assistants, they love a head coach who's going to be loyal to them. They love a head coach that, hey, the defense was terrible in 2022. Neil didn't fire me. Neil didn't clean house. Neil didn't throw us under the bus.
They all love him. All the coaches love him. All the players love him. That's why there were so many fans that were surprised. Like, why is this reaction so pro Neil after he got fired? We all wanted him fired 3 years ago. I get you did, but nobody hates him as a man. So, like, that's just not what the reaction's going to be.
Yeah.
And no one wanted it to come to this in terms of players, coaches, support staff, but it eventually did. But yeah, like, Neil's going to be fine. And honestly, with the way the college football format is now, the college football playoff format is now, he may be sitting there thinking it might be easier to damn win and get in at an App State than worrying about the stress of West Virginia. And like, they're not firing him if they win 8 games instead of 9 or 10. Like, that bar is not nearly as high. So it might be a better spot for him for sure. A lot less pressure. He's not going to get talked about on ESPN. I'll tell you that, unless they're playing a game. Maybe he'll get talked about in the middle of it there. And it is kind of weird that he'll be a Mountaineer still. I'm going to watch that presser when that's an intro, if he is hired there or wherever. But it does appear there's smoke now at App State. And I do think that's a better job than Charlotte. So, like, if that's, maybe he was turning that down because he felt like there are other better ones there, but it's not like, people also thought all this past year that Neil was just going to get screwed, going to sit out. No one ever hire him in again. He's the worst coach in the country. That's not true, obviously. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be fine. If you're Neil, you could even get convinced with a lot of money coming in that maybe I would maybe even, I don't know, sit out the whole process and see if you get something even better than App State eventually. I don't know. Maybe App State's the best you can do right now.
App State seems like a decent job with
Yeah.
good resources and a decent like Charlotte. I think is a tough sell.
Yeah.
And the fact that he passed on that, I tweeted this today. The fact that he passed on that, I think, shows he's got better stuff lined up.
Pretty quickly. I mean, that was like 24 hours after the rumor that they wanted him. He was passing.
Like he's got stuff lined up, App State or different. But I think it is telling also that he was apparently could have had the Charlotte job if he wanted it. Like that's why I said I think he's gonna be a head coach next year. And it seems like nobody's even really thinking that hard about it. The G5 programs are, at least in this kind of part of the country, want him.
No, they're not worried. Like, okay, like you had, some bad times at West Virginia, like you were great at Troy, and like, their standard obviously is lower, but like, the UMass thing was never clearly going to happen. Like the people were throwing it out there because, okay, he's an alum, they need a guy, and like Neil can't get any other job. He'll just take way less money to go there. Clearly not the case. Clearly he has way better options than UMass. And Tony Gibson and Marshall, that's like heavy rumors right now. That also out of, Charles Huff, then Southern Miss, that's heavy rumors right now.
It's so funny, Mike. You and I talked about how weird Huff is on Sunday.
Yeah.
And then this week has been one of the weirdest things.
Did you see? I saw Tom Bragg threw out the picture there. He was in the picture with his family for like his holiday thing, and he has his agency, the CAA, which is obviously a mega agency in the country. Like that's not for nothing. Yeah, he's clearly posturing.
In his press conference, he's like, he's doing the classic, like, I want to be here. It's the university's fault.
Yeah, he's doing.
And then apparently the Marshall Board of Governors had a secret meeting to do Tony Gibson's it's like
that's the rumor, yeah.
What a weird circus that was, and it's so like right after you and I talked about how Huff this kind of attracts this coaching weirdness.
Yeah. Cody Nesper, Mike Osta here, WVSN. This is Mountaineer Report, another live chat edition of the show. We again had a lot of chat action here, so I'm gonna give a quick scan to see if there's anything we didn't hit on in the chat. We're gonna do more resets like this. I do think we have at least another week minimum in this coaching search. I would imagine I want to again caution everybody here before I end up getting any more, hate mail when I put a report out. You're going to hear names you don't like. You're going to hear names you think are unqualified. They're going to actually be names that are interviewing. That does not mean they're getting the job. That does not mean West Virginia's desperate or belittling themselves. This is what goes on. This is called casting a wide net. This is how Ren Baker does a coaching search. Ren Baker is not going to do what you want and interview 3 people, have them all have only power resumes, just use all the Country Road Trust resources, call up Ken Kendrick and McAfee and says, pick between Richard or Jimbo. Who do you want? That's the guy I'll do. And we'll throw darts, whichever one we land on is we're doing. That is not what's going to happen. It just isn't. And again, it could. Rich Rod is a candidate. It could be Rich Rod, but you shouldn't be married to any candidate. And I'm not going to yet fully give my guy yet because people keep asking, well, who is your guy? I think it's pretty obvious off of my reporting and kind of been the way I've been talking. I'm not going to fully give it yet. I'm not fully against the Rich Rod thing, but Rich Rod is not my guy, not my pick for this. I'll tell you that. As we round this out, Cody, let Ren bake. We got a return viewer to return listener there from the last live. Let Baker bake, let Ren bake. That Cody came up with there. We still got to get that on a t-shirt. Number 1, is there anything else you want to get off your chest about this before we close up shop on this particular show? And then number 2, because we had to talk about this, a lot of the fans want Rich Rod. They do. And I'll give Kuz credit here. He brought up the point that if you separate the emotions and you separate the past and you separate anything at all, because even his age is not an issue since Kirsten was hired in Indiana and that worked, and you just look resume to resume, the only candidate that anyone's ever reported or been in rumors that would have a better resume is Jimbo, because he has a national title in more 10-win seasons. And if you believe the Dillinger report that Jimbo does not want to do it, and you're left with Rich Rod and then a bunch of these other guys we mentioned, and maybe some guys off the board, Rich Rod's resume would be the best. Now, I wrote a whole article on how Arizona and Michigan didn't work out, and Jacksonville State is still Jacksonville State in a Group of 5 level, but overall resume would still be the best. So, have you come around at all to Rich Rod, and what would your thoughts be if he was the guy, taking into account what even Kuz brought up, that Rich Rod is so polarizing, but if you just look at resume, he would actually have the best resume now.
Yeah, I just think it's. I have a hard time willingly hiring guys with baggage.
I'm going to answer this, by the way. I know Ren and Jimbo have talked. I cannot confirm they've interviewed him, but I'm going to assume that that's happened. I'm assuming also that if you're getting national reports that he's out of there, that was early in the process, and maybe he told Ren no, and maybe Ren leaked that. That's very possible, because I know that was an early conversation. But go ahead.
Yeah, I just think anytime you hire a guy with baggage, and you got to defend or stuff like that's a hard sell for me. Obviously, I don't make decisions like this. Like Ren signed up to have a hard job.
So are you meaning that you would have to, at WVU, you'd have to defend people that say, I am pissed because of what happened 15 years ago. I now am, like, you would have to send, you think your PR statement would have to be a little different, like we're looking to heal old wounds and all that BS, rather than just say we're excited about this hire?
Well, certainly you would have to. Like,
yeah.
Could you imagine if he hired Rich Rod and made no mention of that stuff?
I guess, yeah.
So like, and the thing that just came to my mind was when Pitt hired Kevin Stallings.
That's one of the worst hire in Pitt history.
I just remember. I remember I watched that press conference, and I forget who their AD was at the time. He's obviously not there now. Like the whole.
I believe that was Peterson at the time, but yeah, go ahead.
The whole press conference was like not excited because Stallings had just gotten fired by Vanderbilt.
Right.
In the whole press conference, there was no excitement. There was like, it was defensive, and so I think that is just a AD's worst nightmare to have something like that. And at least that would be my worst nightmare. And so that's why, like, I don't think it would be Rich Rod. I don't like Rich Rod for the hire.
If it was just resume without baggage, though, what if you didn't have 13-9? Like, what if it was just resume? That's kind of what Kuz is bringing up, that if you're just looking resume and you're giving me boxes of, you want to have proven winner, a guy who gets the culture, a guy that can recruit, a guy that would fit the fabric of the people, a guy that wouldn't worry about people coming up to him at the gas station all over the place, a guy that would be known by the current players still, a guy that, could turn it around, that can build a program, has proven different things, a guy that maybe would win a press conference, even though Ren doesn't care about that. All these boxes, Rich Rod would check those boxes to play devil's advocate. He's probably the only coach that would check all those boxes. All the other coaches we mentioned, there's one of those boxes they don't check. Now, Rich Rod would also check the one with baggage that you're bringing up. But if you take the baggage away and take the emotions of 13-9 and then his departure and all of that, would that change things for you, or is the baggage your main issue?
So, like, I don't. My response to that would be is, why doesn't Rich Rod get brought up for other jobs? Like if we say,
could you argue he should if you're the hottest Group of 5 guy and you have Power 4 experience with success? So, and Cignetti just got hired. He's older than Rich Rod.
Yeah. So it's like, and you're right. It's like the argument is like, if the stuff didn't happen, if 13-9 didn't happen, he would be the best candidate. It's like, well, then why isn't he the best candidate at any other school? Like, he doesn't get brought up for North Carolina. He doesn't get brought up for UCF.
You don't think any of the other schools are? You don't see any of them hiring him if he's not WVU. He'll be back at Jacksonville State. I'd imagine that's the case.
I don't. It just his name doesn't get brought up.
Yeah.
Other than here, so it's that's where I'm.
Neither does Jimbo, though. To be fair, Jimbo has a ring, and nobody else brings Jimbo up.
And that's why
the Texas A&M stain.
And that's why I'm so cool on those two, because it's like. And I get the argument about Rich Rod's resume. I absolutely get it. I
even get a Jimbo argument. I mean, and he's younger than Rich Rod. If I'm another school, I mean, I could wonder, like, why is there something we don't even know? Like, why, if you're another school, if you're UCF, or now you're in the Big 12, or if you're North Carolina, Why wouldn't you call Jimbo and be like, you won national title, man. The Texas A&M thing didn't work out. Don't you want to fix your legacy? You're not even 60 yet.
Yeah.
Like, why is no one else thinking of these guys? That is something to wonder. Like, why? Why is it just WVU or Jimbo is done and Rich Rod can't get out of Group of Five? Like, why is that reality?
Yeah. And Mike, you said something on Sunday. You were like, I think you made a joke about Mac Brown.
Yeah, I made a joke. Yeah, I mean that wouldn't. Yeah,
it's like obviously like Mac Brown's not brought up for this job, right?
Or any job. I mean,
right.
So it's like, kind of having these conversations that we have. That's why they fired him. Like, you're here, but that's it. Like, we're moving on.
It's like he has a national championship. He I believe had a guy win the Heisman.
He did.
So it's
young.
And obviously Mac Brown is much older than all the rest of these guys. But that that's just the example that I can pull right now. But it's like that's and when Ren talks about we got to hire the very best guy. The very best guy. If it was Rich Rod, North Carolina would be talking about him. UCF would be talking about him. Purdue would be talking about him. And it's not. And
do you see this in the chat? And I don't want to have the show go too much longer. But somebody just brought up, I think we need more job openings before Rich Rod is in play for other job due to the way things end in Arizona, which is not even West Virginia baggage. So my question to this person in the chat would be, why does the Arizona baggage that you're saying every other program in the country, including worse ones, would want to wait on him for, make it irrelevant to West Virginia? Like. Some of that baggage is worse than losing a game and then leaving a program. I mean, there's scandalous things that he was accused of there. I mean, why is that not a concern? And I will tell you, I do not believe, and Ren is smarter than me, obviously. I do not believe that when Ren Baker said his only non-negotiable is man of integrity, some people took that as he was trying to send a shot that I'm eliminating Rich Rod. I mean, maybe you do. I do not believe that's what he was doing. I think that's really reading into things. But if he's true to his word, does that eliminate Rich Rod? Because it's not just about leaving. And like, I don't know. Maybe he wouldn't get into that mess again at 60 some years old. Doesn't seem like a Ren Baker hire, even though it makes sense for West Virginia. I got to be honest. Doesn't seem like Ren Baker and him would work together. It doesn't seem like a Ren Baker hire if you take away the emotions of him being a great fit at WVU and the resume.
I didn't see that as a veiled shot at Rich Rod. I just saw that as something Ren says. And somebody in the chat said, wouldn't you have questions to answer if you hire an unproven G5 coach? So you're talking unproven in Power 4, but like they're not unproven coaches. So
I mean, you're not going to hire a losing Group of 5 coach. Like if you hire any of the Group of 5 coaches that we mentioned, even Albin in Ohio, which is really lower level schedule success, like that's my concern there. He's never dealt with this at all, ever. I don't think he's ready. I would rather go Odom than Albin if I'm Ren, but even him, they're successful at that level. I mean, everyone loved the Kurt Cincinnati hire at Indiana, Cody.
Yeah.
Indiana has 3 bowl wins in 150 years of football.
Yeah.
They were desperate for anybody of note. It wasn't like they had the picket litter. That is a worse job than West Virginia in every cycle. And yes, they hit a home run with Kurt Cincinnati, but they did not know hiring him that it was a guaranteed power success. Like his success was building up an FCS to be FBS and having a few years as a solid competitive team at FBS and having, kind of a breakout year. It wasn't like he was coming out of there with success in the SEC and all these conference titles. You know what I mean? Like they got lucky, but that easily could have been a bad move.
Yeah. So Sean, let's thought experiment, Sean. You're saying if they hired John Summerall, right? Like he's a G5 kid. Okay. You think that press conference would be a dud? Like with the success he had at Troy and the success he had at Tulane, like you think that would be a dud? Nobody would like that press conference. Or Monken at Army. Somebody said, why does Monken get brought up? Because it's freaking hard to win at Army, and he's won at Army. Yeah. That's why he gets brought up.
Yeah.
You think, like, he's the hire. That's a off-the-wall one. But he's the hire.
Yeah.
The success he's had at Army. You think that press conference is a dud? And I'm not saying these guys are perfect. I'm not saying
no one is perfect. No, there's no one perfect here.
To say it would be a dud because
outside of Nick Saban, maybe
that guy's a G. Yeah. That would be a dud because that guy's a G5. Like, you can't think like that.
Oh, you see, like the connection to Troy would be a weird feeling. You don't want to do Troy people now. Now Troy's eliminated.
Yeah, no, Troy's.
We can totally out of the question.
Yeah,
Anyone who ever worked
Chadwell's
at Troy.
another one. Like, Chadwell's the guy. He gets hired. The success he's had at Liberty is insane. Like, that's a dud press conference. Like just think about it a little bit. Like, it's
that'd be funny for Mike Montoura, by the way.
Yeah, a Liberty guy, Mike Montoura.
Yeah.
I don't actually think Monken is a triple option guy. I think, Army's obviously you have to do it at Army.
He would not do. There's no way he'd be able. That would not work in the Big 12. Like, there's no way that would be the only thing he would do. Maybe you sprinkle a trick play, but he'd have to. And I'm not predicting it's him. No, but you'd have to obviously be doing something else. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, and also, Ren Baker was an unknown guy when they were doing the athletic director search. He came out of North Texas. Originally was a basketball lifer who was like a grad assistant. I mean, his whole story could be a movie by itself. And I mean, just a Disney feel-good movie, not even about sports. And then you get here, and there were other people that people brought up. Pat White was throwing out names. He got the Bill Stewart hire. He didn't get this one. And then Ren was the guy, and it was a great hire. He's done a lot with a really bad situation, but he totally fit once you read that resume. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I knew about Ren Baker before the hire. You read into it, who is this guy for real? You talk to some people that covered him there. Okay, he checks all these boxes. It makes total sense why he was the guy. So there could be that. There could be the Ren Baker as the head coach, where you aren't really aware of him. You aren't hearing about him until maybe the final days, and you're not really knowing him. He's not going to be the flashy, sexy guy. And I do believe Ren Baker is more concerned. That's the theme here. He's more concerned with winning games for years to come than winning the press conference. And I do believe that Ren is not BSing us. I'll tell you this too, Cody. Ren even alluded to this a little bit when talking about, like, I'm not going to talk about his contract because I have contracts, and when my contract was getting figured out because this school could, call me. I was listening to that and I was like, man, you're basically talking about Missouri. Like, it almost seems like you're outward on Front Street saying that you were trying to get poached, which everyone reported that they were trying to get him when they need an AD and he decided to stay. I do not believe Ren Baker would be at a school. And we'll kind of close with this thought maybe and see what you think here. I do not believe Ren Baker would be at any school he did not think he had a chance to win at a high level. I do not think he would still be there. I think he would take a job like Missouri, give a big essay and say, love the people at West Virginia, but you're screwed financially. I'm going to go here and do this because it's better for me and my family. Sorry about it. If he did not believe that this was a good job, if he did not believe that his spreadsheets are telling him certain things, I don't think he would still be there. And he even said, like, the wins and loss record and who's a contender is straight correlation of strength of schedule. West Virginia, I'll tell you what he wants to say that he doesn't say because he's such a great politician. Neil was right. The schedule was dumb. They're too damn hard. We don't need to have schedules this hard. When Nalen and Rich Rod won, including Rich Rod, the schedules were freaking easier. We need to have a schedule like everybody freaking else and playing these stacked rivals because you're mad about being in the Big 12. It's not where it's at. But I don't believe Rich Rod would be doing this if he didn't think there was a ceiling of success at WVU. I think he would be gone. I think another school would want him. I just do not think he'd be sitting there just doing some charity service saying, I feel bad for the people, but we can't win here, so I'm going to stick around and try to fix it. I don't think so. I think Ren legitimately wants to win a national title in one of these sports. I mean, it sounds crazy. I think he does, and I think he believes it can happen.
Yeah, and I don't think, Ren seems to have his fingers in everything, right? Like, it's not like he's ignoring any of, like, nobody cares because it's volleyball. He made the best volleyball hire in the country last year. Like, a top 5 coach in the country, he poached from her alma mater, right? Like, they're building a new baseball facility right outside the field. The soccer team's been in the top 5 each of the last 2 years. Like, women's basketball is maybe the hottest program on campus. Like, I don't think an AD, like you said, that doesn't believe in the school is doing all those things. Like, an AD that has one foot out the door doesn't care about all these things. He doesn't
have to go on all these trips too. Like, he's going to everyone's games. Like, he's never at home, basically. A lot of ADs don't travel, even certainly to minor games.
So that's like I totally agree with you about Ren. Everything you said, it's obvious, and you keep saying it. Ren doesn't BS us, right? Like he just and at times he's too honest.
Yeah,
Like
I think if you hear,
he
like, I
just
think he was.
says what he thinks.
I think he was literally talking about the Missouri situation. I
Yeah.
think he was telling us somebody was trying to, maybe it wasn't Missouri, but I think he was dropping the seeds. Like there was another school that wanted me and I chose to stay here and we reworked my contract. That's kind of what he was saying. Cause he was talking about reworking Neal's last year and you got to, do it in market value. And he was making the joke, like, I got a contract. We got to get market value with me because another school could try to take me and then I got to listen to the best job. And you're sitting there saying, Ren, like the report said, this literally went down like 6 months ago. Like you're confirming it basically. But I think, Ren is probably so smart. He probably was sitting there thinking to himself, I'm giving him this confirmation without actually saying it literally. Like, I think he has some fun with this. I think he's having a ball. I think he loves the presser. He loves the search. He's going to love the intro. And, I think he's going to have some fun. And this is the guy he's married with and he's connected with. And I think he wants to really have that relationship be sound because even look at Ren and Neal, they were trying to develop that. I mean, Ren, like I think he's gonna, with Rich Rod or Jimbo, like you guys want to do this, you want to come back to school. Do you want to be in a hotel and eat McDonald's with me, a bunch of nights a week? Because I'm traveling these games. You're my best friend. We're together. Like he's all in this. I don't think this is gonna be like what they dealt with before. So maybe he would rather do a Kotelnicki or a George Elo or whatever because that guy would be a better relationship to him. I don't know. Maybe he thinks George Elo could be the next Arizona State young up and comer. I don't know. We'll see what the next day brings us in terms of news in this coaching search because there's a lot more that's going to happen. I appreciate everybody that's here again. Once again, viewers and chatters went berserk. I'm assuming it's because of this search because we don't normally go live, but maybe we're going to do a lot more of these if this keeps on working. You can find this every week at your podcast. And once again, I'm going to apologize for the archive podcast listeners. Not traditional pod here, not traditional Mountaineer Report, as we will still try to give you some of those shows, maybe dive into each particular candidate and give their own ball of wax. But the chat just keeps on churning. So why not? But that'll do it for this edition of the show. That'll do it for this live edition here of Mountaineer Reporters. We had to talk the search and had to give an update to it. And I think the consensus is, get comfortable. Get comfortable because there's more to come. And I also think you can sleep fine this weekend. You don't need to check your phone at 2 a.m. There's not an announcement going down this weekend. I would be quite shocked if there was one, but maybe there would, because like Cody's saying, if you believe you're the top job, why wait? But I think we got at least another week into this, and I think you're going to hear things you don't like. You're then going to hear things you do like, and the advice I keep on giving, I know Cody gave it too. Don't get married to any of these candidates, man. If it's Rich Rod, I can tell and say why that makes sense, and I think there got to be a lot of mending offenses, and some people are going to be mad, but I could see why he would do it. If it's Jimbo, I could see it. If it's Kotelnicki, I could see it. I can see Ren's mindset for any of these hires, and I'm not going to just go walk in hating it. I'll give them all open minds, but you got to be that way too. I'm a little nervous for whoever the hell this is, unless it's Rich Rod, that they're immediately going to have a decent section of the fan base already mad. And that was just the Neal Brown era. And I don't think the new guys, like, that's going to make a coach want to get the hell out of here if they're having success. Like, so if you just let it play. And I do know for a fact from people that Darren DeVries was not thrilled about the reaction to him after one loss in the backyard brawl, and it's all fixed now. But like, the greatest fan base in the world can also be the ugliest. Let's not push a coach out the door because he's like, what the hell's going on with these people here? But that'll do it for this. Again, thanks everybody in the chat, and make sure to like and subscribe Mountaineer Report and hit up all our coverage at WV Sports Now.